I read a article that said around a quarter of respondents to a Goldman Sachs survey said they plan to retire before 55. What big changes do I need to make if I'm going to retire a handful of years sooner than I originally expected?
Okay. Yeah. It, it's kind of funny. I've seen an awful lot of news talking about how many people want to retire early. Personally, I've been doing this for 35 years. That's been something that's been going on for as long as I can remember. Generally speaking, that's kind of a great thing to think about. Being able to retire early, right? Very difficult to do. so, and so oftentimes people can't do it. I mean, they might want to do it. It might be 25 and think I'm retiring at 55, and they get to there and they realize life got in the way. They got, kids and a house and a mortgage and all these things, and didn't, become the, as rich as you thought you would be, when you're younger. So I'd say that there's a couple of things that you have to think about there. First of all, can you do it? And so that's where I think, financial planning, Monte Carlo simulation, and those types of things come into play where you can test that out because you're now asking your money to last longer, right? The rest of your life, whatever that might be, is, let's just say 85 or 100 or whatever it is that you think you might live to. When you retire at 55 versus 65, your money has to last 10 years longer. Um, and so and you have 10 years less to accumulate money as far as that goes too. So that's what makes it super difficult. That would be one thing I would consider. The other thing is, and again, it depends on how old you are when you start considering this. You cannot get to your IRAs or 401ks or all these other type of savings assets prior to 59 and a half. So if you're going to retire at 55, and you want to get into those assets, you're going to pay a penalty to do so. There is a thing called the Rule 72T, which allows you to take money out of those retirement assets. And if that's all you have, that works quite well, but it has some restrictions. And if you have some time, it'd be better off building up some assets outside the IRA. So maybe you give up a little bit of the contributions to the 401k and put that money into kind of a regular taxable liquid account just to bridge that gap from 59, from 55 to 59 and a half. Never cut back your 401k past the point of the match, right? So if you're, whatever your match is, get that because that's a 100% rate of return. But past that, there's some things you might want to consider if you are going to retire early. Make sure you have some assets outside of retirement plans, in my opinion.
So for like retiring early, you basically, if you're starting to think about it, you should be really ramping up your savings rates if you're really seriously considering it. I
Yep.
think now there's so much wealth of information about retiring early.
Yep.
A lot of people talk about it, and you see these stories where people are saving 50 to 70% of their income just
Yep.
so they can retire early.
Yep. Yeah. And sometimes that's what it takes. It depends on how early you think of that and how what time you have left before this early retirement age. Uh, and I think yeah, it goes on both sides. You've got to restructure possibly your life to be able to save. I mean, that's a huge savings rate, like 50, 60, 70%, right? Um, and you got to keep that mentality at least for a portion of your retirement. You got to keep that low cost mentality. I think what you're looking at personally is I'm willing to trade my some of my lifestyle and live a simpler life in exchange for not having to go to work every day. I think that's fair. There's nothing wrong with that. It's those people that say, okay, I want to spend $400,000 a year. I've saved up $1 million. I want to retire at 55. Well, I hate to tell you, if you do the math on that, it's not going to work. You're not going to get to 85 with that money. You're going to spend it all out. So, again, it's just kind of finding that balance. And as long as you're willing to kind of trade. Now, if I have $10 million and I'm 55 because I was in part of a startup or, okay, those work, right? But the numbers have to work as far as that goes. And what you're willing to spend has to fit really well within the assets that you do have. Because you're not going to get Social Security until at least 62 and maybe even 70, depending on what you end up doing. And so, how do you get by for all of those years and such too? So, um, it does take a mentality shift, and you're trading off one thing for another. For most people, it means trading off some extra lifestyle benefits in order to have a lifestyle benefit of not going to work. Yeah, that's okay.